Twitter on Tuesday, for the first time, prompted readers to check the facts in tweets sent by U.S. President Donald Trump, warning readers his claims about mail-in ballots were false and had been debunked by fact-checkers.
This is a whole can of worms, but Twitter's using CNN and the Washington Post as their fact-checkers.
President Trump says Twitter tried to censor free speech when it placed this fact-checking notice on his tweets on mail-in ballots and fraud. And the partisan divide truly opened up. One user tweeted today, "Fact-checking is not censorship. Trump's lying needs to be kept in check." On Twitter this afternoon, actor James Woods pointed out that the head of Twitter's fact-checking team has a history of anti-Trump and anti-conservative tweets.
Vote by mail. Can you or the White House staff or your campaign provide any evidence to back up your claim that mail-in voting is rife with fraud, like the example you gave of people working in rooms filling out false ballots? You've been talking about voter fraud since the beginning of this administration.
Very fair.
And where's the evidence of it?
I think there's a lot of evidence, but we'll provide you with some.
Women are accused of being part of a paid voter fraud ring in Tarrant County.
Tonight, they face dozens of felony charges connected to mail-in ballots.
What I see, and every one of those states that you mentioned is a state that happens to be won by the Democrats.
Prosecutors expected to move forward on prosecuting a voter fraud case. Erica Lozano Pelayo is accused of altering mail-in ballot applications.
So in this next bill, we will be supporting vote by mail in a very important way. We think it's a health issue.
Ballots sent in by mail in Tarrant County had what investigators now believe were fraudulent signatures and information.
It doesn't match up. This was an accepted ballot.
Political consultant Aaron Harris found a paper trail that he handed over to state investigators that helped lead to nearly 30 felony counts against 4 women.
Voting by mail is wrought with fraud and abuse.
Can you or the White House staff or your campaign provide any evidence to back up your claim that mail-in voting is rife with fraud, like the example you gave of people working in rooms filling out false ballots?
North Carolina's election board is looking into allegations of absentee ballot fraud.
In my experience in New York, paper ballots are extremely susceptible to fraud. I want a paper trail. I want paper somewhere, but pure paper with no machines. I can show you experience which would make your head spin.
Can you or the White House staff or your campaign provide any evidence to back up your claim?
But in part of the fact check, Twitter was saying that mail-in ballots are already used in some states, including Oregon, Utah, and Nebraska. But that statement appears to conflate automatic all-mail voting with absentee ballots in regard to Nebraska. Nebraska did send mailed applications to every voter in response to the pandemic, but the state didn't automatically send ballots.
The geniuses at Twitter subjected Trump to their first ever fact check. But in your state, a recent 2-year investigation, didn't you guys uncover an alleged ballot harvesting scheme involving mail-in ballots?
Well, we've found many over the years, Laura.
Yeah, I've done some deep dive in it. There really is no record of massive fraud or even serious fraud from mail-in voting.
I talked to people in Ward 8, that's the Worcester Square area, who say absentee ballot fraud is going on in their community, and they say they were very concerned.
There really is no record of massive fraud or even serious fraud.
I talked to a handful of residents who say someone has been taking their ballot and mailing it, and it went as far as someone actually filling out the ballots. Now, the complaints of possible voter fraud.
Well, the president this morning is threatening to shut down or, quote, strongly regulate social media platforms. This is, of course, after Twitter fact-checked 2 of his false tweets.
2 of his false tweets on mail-in ballots.
Florida, they busted 2 women. 2 women on, third-degree felonies for voter fraud.
After Twitter fact-checked 2 of his false tweets.
So she just made up names. She put some dead people. She registered some dead people. She just made up falsified information, sent it all in, and the registrar caught her for falsifying all this information.
After Twitter fact-checked 2 of his false tweets on mail-in ballots.
Another woman was actually working in the Miami-Dade Elections Department. She was a volunteer opening up mail-in ballots. When she noticed that some people didn't vote all the way down the ballot for the mayor, she started checking boxes for them, for her favorite candidate.
Unreal.
And was caught doing that. Yeah.
And these are just the ones that have been caught. It makes you wonder how many others are out there.
Yeah.
So, Doni, Twitter is fact-checking the president's false claims on mail-in ballots.
One of the relatives of the deceased re-registered person got a ballot, and they're like, wait a minute, my father passed away.
Twitter is fact-checking Trump on voter misinformation.
And what it turned out was another canvasser, another student, basically, instead of going door to door, just started re-registering some dead people on the rolls to influence the election.
I mean, when Donald Trump is talking about this rigged election, this is exactly what he's hitting at. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And there's cases like these, there's multiple cases of these across the country.
In California, the governor sent, I hear, or is sending millions of ballots all over the state to anybody. People that aren't citizens. We're not going to destroy this country by allowing things like that to happen.
The president also today continued to spread falsehood about voter fraud as a reason not to have wider vote-by-mail efforts in the general election.
You look at what they do, where they grab thousands of mail-in ballots and they dump it. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of dishonesty going along with mail-in voting, mail-in ballots.
This is not a new talking point for the president. He, of course, has repeatedly, from the earliest days of his administration, pushed false conspiracy theories about voter fraud. They're not backed up by any reputable data.
A lot of people, my opinion, and based on proof, that try and get in illegally and actually vote illegally.
I know maybe nobody cares that he just continues to lie.
Look, Twitter owes the president an apology. They fact-checked him, Laura, for his opinion.
My opinion.
And by the way, his opinion was based on fact.
He's continuing to lie.
Because the Democrats are trying to steal this election. I just tweeted out that the Democrat plan to have everyone vote by mail is an invitation for fraud, and it's a total scam.
All states should allow Americans to vote by mail. It's easy to vote by mail.
They owe him an apology.
No, well, he's not going to get it from Jack.
Well, they need to stop fact-checking opinion.
Texas Secretary of State and Attorney General are looking into fraudulent Gregg County absentee ballots.
When Donna Kimberling and her husband got a duplicate ballot after already voting, they called the elections department, told it was a glitch, and shredded the second ballots. But then...
Last week, on the 20th of May, I looked at the ballot here. They sent us our third official ballots.
Who has sent their ballots in? Now, do you think those ballots are properly counted? Do you think? So when you send them in, do you think they're properly counted?
But when people get their ballots and mail them in themselves, no history of fraud at all.
I am here to announce that the U.S. Attorney's Office has unsealed criminal charges against Dominic J. DeMuro. DeMuro has been charged fraudulently stuffing the ballot boxes for specific Democratic candidates in the 2014, 2015, and 2016 primary elections.
No history of fraud at all.
I know they're all saying, oh, of course, everything is so legitimate, everything is so... Perhaps I'm a more skeptical person. Okay.
Where's the evidence of it?
DeMuro has pled guilty.
The thing is, this whole fact-checking thing is designed as a way to tackle misinformation, which would be good if there was a balance in misinformation. But we do know from research that the news media is about 90% liberal. So the right generally is over-policed daily compared to the left. Look at it, it's like a highway where only the red cars get pulled over while the blue cars keep going. I mean, imagine if you tried to fact-check everything said against Trump, from the Russian collusion to the accusations of racism to the 25th Amendment that went on for a couple of months. And then now you have the blood libel of the coronavirus, in which you have certain people on MSNBC saying, you know, he's got 100,000 deaths on his hands. It's impossible to actually fact-check the immensity of these claims against Trump. So you know it's only going to work one way. They're just going to pull over the red cars and let the blue cars drive by.
This is their opportunity to try and rig the election. We're not going to put up with it. And If they get away with it, Laura, it's the end of democracy. It's not just the end of this presidential campaign. If they get away with this, democracy has been shredded.
And in the fact check that Twitter also put out, it said fact checkers say there is no evidence that mail-in ballots are leaked to voter fraud.
As if we needed more challenges with this election, a clerk here said that she's seen that potentially hundreds of people who requested their absentee ballots just never got them.
He said, we lied. This is a 30-plus year Republican who said my party was lying about voter fraud.
You literally have a greater chance of being eaten by a shark, struck by lightning the same place twice, finding somebody who truly believes they were abducted on a UFO, than you do of finding somebody who's actually committed prosecutable voter fraud.
Folks, interesting story out of Michigan where the prosecutor has ruled that a city clerk in a Detroit suburb altered records tied to absentee ballots cast in last year's general election to make it look like they did not have valid signatures. Southfield City Clerk Sharikia Hawkins was arraigned Monday morning on 6 felony counts, including falsifying election records, forgery of a public record, and misconduct in office.
The indictment shows that, at least in these cases, many of the ballots involved were for Democratic candidates.
I'm not going to say which party does it, but
Democratic candidates.
Thousands of votes are gathered and they come in and they're dumped in a location, and then all of a sudden you lose elections that you think you're going to win. I won't stand for it. Well, we're going to find out about the proof because you're going to see what's going on. And I'm not going to stand for it.
Why don't they fact check Pencilneck? I mean, he's been lying about collusion for 3 years. I'd put a little fact check behind any of those tweets. And I know why they chose this to fact check, because it's the only way they're going to beat Trump is ballot harvesting. It's not even a fact check, Katie. It's spin. I mean, like, I have sheets of paper here of reports that I found on Twitter that say that there's a lot of abuse with mail ballots. It's from the New York Times, the AP, CBS. I mean, these aren't fact checkers. This is like the Democrat State of the Union rebuttal. And they don't understand how weak it makes the left look because Biden can't take him out. The media can't take him out. Now they're asking big tech for help. I mean, you guys can't do this on your own. Why can't Biden retweet Trump and say this or that? That's his job. And then you find out the guy in charge of enforcing the rules on Twitter is some left-wing hack that called the Trump folks Nazis. The whole thing's so cooked up that it's almost helping the president because it makes him, again, look like he's got everybody against him. You know, Twitter, the FBI, the mainstream media, and he's going to shove it right back in their face in November.
What a nightmare. Look, we're destroying our economy, we're limiting our freedoms, and now they just want to blow up our elections, and we can't let that happen.
Our voting system, first of all, we should have voter ID. When you vote, you should have voter ID. And if you send something in, you should be sure, as a state and as a country, you should be sure that that vote is meaningful and it's not just made fraudulently, because there's a lot of fraudulent voting going on in this country. This country should have voter ID.
So I don't know what Twitter is talking about. If they're going to fact check people, fair enough, then they ought to hire their own team of people to do it rather than leaning on people who have a questionable history of reporting actual facts.